Okay. I went to this is a manager, a director actually, sending an email to managers in a large organization, client firm of ours. Okay. I went to a meeting today about budgeting in the upcoming review process. One of the things we were talking about is expenses. I think you all know that there is new guidance coming down about expense processing. What I didn't know is that the guidance isn't so much about process as it is about cutting expenses. So the VP spent some time telling us that we might as well start now watching expenses. We batted around some ideas and we agreed that 14-day advance airline tickets, professional book purchases, and monthly celebration dinners are places to look at. Okay, now look. I would argue that in that paragraph, okay, budgeting and review process, right? I mean, do we agree here? I mean, when you read that, you're like, okay, you're looking for it, right? Okay, I went to a meeting. Thanks. I don't want to read your diary. I mean, there's a part of me that goes, I don't want to read your diary, boss.
Right.
Sorry. And then we talked about expenses. Okay, maybe this is going to be about expenses. But still, in the second sentence, 20, 30 words into it, we don't know where we're going, right?
Right.
Right. But probably emotionally we go, uh-oh, expenses, right?
Yeah, so absolutely.
That's a negative white noise happening.
Yeah,
right?
the question is about, what do you want me to do? What's the bottom line? Come on.
Now, to some degree, to be fair, that response that you just had, that what do you want me to do, bottom line, that is the high D, right? The high D in both of us. Just right. But the high C wants the data up front, or wants the conclusion up front too, and then they want explication after that. But look, the key idea when you get done with the paragraph is expense reduction, right? So you put that bottom line up front, and here's how it sounds. Please start reducing expenses, period. 3 areas we can hit right now are 14-day advance airline tickets, professional book purchases, and monthly celebration dinners. This came out of a discussion at the budget meetings. The new expense guidance will be more about expense reduction than we thought. I think we might as well get started now, period.
Yeah, that's clear, right?
Yeah, it's very clear.
Matter of fact, if you were scanning that email and every paragraph was written like that, you could read the first sentence of every paragraph and you'd be done.
Yes.
Right? If you're me, right. and I knew a subordinate was writing a note or my boss was writing a note like that, and I knew they wrote effectively like that, I could get through email.
Didn't you actually tell the story about the guy who worked for you, who was leaving you the long voicemails,
yeah.
and he responded beautifully to your request for an executive summary?
Exactly.
In a paragraph, the executive summary is the first sentence.
Yeah.
That's it. That's good. Okay, good. That was really good. Okay. Now, I know there are folks who are going to say that when they hear that the example seems a little harsh. There's an edge to it. And I want to argue 2 things for them, okay? The first is that it feels harsh because we are all way too used to the long, indirect way of writing and, frankly speaking, that has infected our communications over the years, okay? So I think people might feel that way. I really do believe they're reacting more to the difference than actually being able to really truly say that's harsh writing. It's clear writing. It's elegant writing. It's short writing. It's to the point. And some people say that's harsh, but it's really not harsh. It's just less harsh, or it's more harsh than the blah that we get nowadays. It's paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, sort of old-fashioned governmental writing and so on. Now, second, if you think it's always harsh, in other words, short and to the point and correct and clear and so on, go back and reread the blog post that introduces that topic and see if the blog post feels harsh, because it uses all the techniques that we talk about in this cast. And we're going to come back to that, the blog post. Okay? Good.
Okay, so what about using the active voice?
Active voice is way easier to read and understand than passive voice. And of course, the reason it's easier to read is because we live our lives actively. We do things. So it's kind of funny to live our lives actively and then spend all of our time making it passive in terms of how we talk about it. And really, using the active voice is easy to do, although the way I think about doing it is actually kind of funny.
So how do you do it?
You basically eliminate the passive voice in your writing.
Are we going to go around and around again, author boy?
No, really. Actually, in this case, I'm just being clear. It's just that passive voice is easier to see and define than active voice. Active voice isn't as easy to see or to teach. So what we recommend is simple. To achieve the active voice, you go through your writing, and again, here we go again, edit, hint, 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 and you go through and you eliminate the passive voice.
getting ready to strangle you. It's like, it sounds like you're just like, be creative.
Yeah.
Be visionary.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
How do I be creative? Well, you're visionary. How do I become visionary? How do you get creative? That's a good thing. Yeah.
So, behavior boy. How about the how?
Yeah, passive voice is very easy to see. You look for forms of the verb to be, and they are am, in other words, I am, you are, were, so am, are, were, as in we were, was, I was, is, he is, be, being, been. Okay, those are the words. Am, are, were, was, is, be, being, been. Okay? You look for those together with an ending of a verb, on the end of a verb, of ed or en. So, some examples. Was finished. It was finished. Or are cleaned. They are cleaned. Okay? Or were completed. Right? In all three of those cases, the verb finish, clean, complete is now finished, cleaned, completed. But it's not past tense. Right? It's just passive voice. And when you see it, when you see those, the were and the are and the was with the ed or the en on the end of it, you rewrite the sentence, getting rid of that verb tense. Now, most writers will basically say the easiest way to start doing that is to put the subject of the sentence at the front. Rather than saying the dog was walked by the boy, because there's the was and then there's the ed on the walk, you say the boy walked the dog.
I feel better now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Again, it's just I see it and I do it so often. And when I write my first draft, I have that passive voice. I say the dog was walked by the boy. And it adds words. You can make yourself sound more formal. You can use bigger words, longer words with that ed on the end of it or the en or whatever. And it's just not.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not as clear as the active voice. Subject, verb, predicate, meaning this did something to that. Don't say that had something done to it by this, right? And a lot of times people use the passive voice, Mike, to avoid the directness of saying something was done by something else. In other words, they want to soften it, and it does soften it. The problem is it makes it harder to understand the fundamental intent.
Well, in business writing, it's used extensively to avoid responsibility.
Exactly. Oh, totally right.
Because the subject is completely left off.
Yes, right.
Right?
Yeah, right. The dog was walked.
The report was written poorly.
Yeah, exactly.
By who?
I wrote a poor report. Yes,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
My report was, yeah, exactly. Okay, good.
Well, that's it for part one, and we'll finish up part two of this exciting series next week. Until then, everyone have a great one, and make sure you join us on the discussion forums. See you next week. So long. Welcome to the Manager Tools Podcast for Monday, April 16th, 2007. Write More Effectively, Part 2 of 2. Hello everyone, this is Mike, and welcome back to Manager Tools, where the topic, as always, is about effective management behavior. Today we finish up our two-part series on writing effectively. If you missed last week's cast, go back and listen to it now. Why get only half the fun? As a quick reminder, remember that the word 17 appeared in last week's introduction text, which, as you may recall, I read word for word. In today's cast, Mark makes reference to the introductory blog post. He's referring to last week's introduction, not this week, so please keep that in mind as you listen. All right, well, let's go. about eliminating commas?
When you find commas in your writing, try replacing them with a period. And then rewrite the little bit after where the comma used to be, making that the start of a new sentence. Usually what it means is eliminating the word and, right? And then making a super simple change in terms of capitalizing or changing one or two words there right after the and that was there after the comma. Now, look, this is just a technique I found works for me. I do think they definitely teach it in writing classes. The reason for it is simple. Commas all too often indicate us smashing two ideas together into one sentence. And sometimes when we talk, it's okay to use an and, right? But sentences, and this is important, sentences are the core idea presentation device in the English language. Because when we communicate about our lives, what we do in our lives. Even when you talk theory, you're essentially talking about what we're doing or its implication for our lives and our activities. And the reason they're the core idea presentation is because we have an idea and we present it, and the idea often is something did something to something else, or something occurred relative to something else. You have one idea and one sentence. Now, not everybody needs this. Some people actually, when they read their writing, they don't find a lot of commas. And we're not suggesting that you don't use commas when you're putting together a series of examples, 3 or 4 things. A list of things does need commas or semicolons. But in general, if you've got a comma and an and, you're probably finding it's not a run-on sentence, it's just 2 ideas in a sentence, and it would sound better, be communicated better, be easier to understand on the part of the reader or the listener to put a period, change those couple of words around after the and make it 2 sentences.
And the great thing about this is doing this gets us in the mode of editing.
Yes.
We really think everyone ought to edit their writing.
Yeah, there's the old. I think it's the provenance of this quote may not be Pascal. I think there are some sources that say Blaise Pascal said this, but the great line is, whoever said it, I would have written you a shorter letter had I more time. And that encapsulates the basic fundamental principle of great writing. We were talking about before off air that the whole, when writers are characterized or represented in movies or whatever, they show somebody writing, all of a sudden they pull out the last page and it's done. No, that's not the way it works. What happens is we write, and there's a great line about writing, don't sit down to think about what you're going to write. Sit down to write about what you think. And most writers who are really good will say, I sat down and I just kind of I just threw it all out there on the page. And then I realized as I wrote what I was thinking about, it was terribly disorganized and jumbled and so on. But there were some core points there that I wanted to make. I cut out all the crud and I rework it. And what great writers say is, I'm not a writer, I'm a rewriter. I have an idea, it gets down on the page, and then I mold it, shape it, forge it, cool it, heat it, and ended up with something really, really good. And we strongly recommend, even in email, that people write, but more importantly, actually, people draft and then they edit. We shouldn't think of ourselves typing as writing. That's not writing.
Right, yeah.
It's drafting, and then you edit. And when you finished editing, you have written something. Great point. Passive voice there.
There you go. And the only time passive voice is acceptable.
Right, exactly. This one time. Exactly.
Cool. Now, you really want us, this is going to look really kind of interesting in the office, you want us to read our writing out loud?
Yes. Just try it. And the reason I suggest it is if you stumble reading your own writing, your reader will stumble reading it themselves. Everybody, whether people argue with me about this all the time, I'm sorry, it's not me. Everyone reads by saying words in their heads. So essentially, they're saying your words for you. If you can't say it naturally and easily when you read your own writing, what makes you think that they're going to be any better when they try to do it themselves?
Because they're a lot smarter.
Right? Yeah, that's right, exactly. There's an old saying that goes something like, if you have to murder the language to make your point, it's not the language's fault. It's the fault of your idea.